All right, welcome to episode 56 of the At Bat podcast presented by WARR Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, joined by my co-host Miles Porter, as well as Gabe Wilkins, who of course you watch all the time on WARR Media's Open Run podcast. How we doing, guys? How we doing, Miles?
Doing good, doing good. It's very rainy outside, but we got some good baseball going on. The Cubs almost blew it last night. We will talk about that. I'm getting really effing tired of some of these things going on with this team. But it's going good. It's going good. We won. We won this past Sunday, 14-0. So that's always great. Coming off of a very tough loss for the heavy hitters. So, we're in the middle of our season now. So it's that time of the year where we just gotta continue to pace ourselves until it's playoff time. So
Oh yeah,
good.
oh yeah. Hey, you already know Miles always raking, weekly and on the weekends all the time.
I
So
took my
good,
first
good.
offer last week, and it was a really bad game.
I mean, the fact that it's your first offer says everything right there. The fact that you have to point that out means that you haven't been going over, so it is
When
what
you're
it is.
Agent
It
Hey,
happened
Orange,
to the best of them.
yeah,
Baseball, one of them sports that humble you. If you're having
so
success
humble
three
and
times
humble.
out of 10, you're doing good.
Yeah, yeah.
for real. How we doing, Gabe? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I can't complain. I mean, I'm kind of sharing some of Mal's sentiments when it comes to his Cubs, no different with my White Sox. Anytime you see teams blowing games, especially in divisions like the AL and NL Central that are just there for the taking, and anybody who wants it can claim it. Those definitely put a damper taste in your mouth. But outside of that, I'm doing good, just trying to stay dry and stay warm as possible.
Yeah, at least we're getting this rain today and not yesterday. Of course, we're recording this on July 5th, day after July 4th. Hope there was a little bit of rain, at least in the suburbs, but nothing that really hit us over here where I'm at. But it's good to see everyone inside staying dry. As for the Cubs, they're also staying dry today as they're in Milwaukee. They're playing game 3 against the Brewers inside. And we'll start with them. As of course, we talked off air. Miles has missed a couple shows now. So I want to get his feels for the Cubs and what has been going on because the last 9 games, 2-7. They went 1-5 on the homestand. We went from having a great streak of baseball where they got up to 3 games. They got up to a point where they were 3 games back of first place, and now they're sitting at 7 games entering July 5th. So it's not looking too pretty, but when it comes to there's been a lot of good signs, and in the sense it's right now both of these two teams with the Cubs and the White Sox almost in the exact same spot, 7 games back. So there's a lot of decisions to be made, and they still have a few more weeks to decide. But Miles, since you've last been on the show, what have you taken from the Cubs and that kind of like going from having that nice streak of like I think they won like 11 out of 15 or something like that, but they were pretty hot, and then now they kind of fallen off a little bit. And that Cleveland series was particularly disappointing, just because he could have easily won 2 out of 3. Hell, maybe even sweep. I know that game where they got shut out was tough, but man, just so many missed opportunities. But what have you thought about the Cubs so far?
Yeah, oh gosh, very, very up and down, very streaky. Clearly, this team is still missing some key components. Now, I actually really love our rotation as a whole. When you really kind of take a
Mhm.
step back and you look at Stroman and you look at Steele and Hendricks and Smiley, it's a great punch 1 through 4. So for the most part, in terms of where we can go, it's very promising. But we got to be consistent in the bullpen. We got to be consistent with the bats. We got to come through in moments, getting guys over, driving guys in. That's really been the main thing going on with the Cubs lately. It's never not never, but right now we really struggle with staying in sync. And I think a lot of us Cubs fans were a little bit thrown off as to how poorly we played at home, um, with some pretty exceptional weather for the most part. So it's unfortunate how the Cubs have kind of dug themselves another hole, and I'm curious to see what moves are going to be made soon in terms of where do we want to take this team. I still think this is a ball club that is 2 or 3 key moves away, 2 or 3 key guys, what I'm saying, away from being actual contenders. Christopher Morel continues to just perform his butt off, and I feel that he's been one of those young sparks for the team. Cody Bellinger has come back, and he's been absolutely phenomenal as well. Nico Horner continues to also be great, and I feel like Nico does not get enough credit at all. He's been great for us. There's a lot of great things to point out. Saya has been a little bit streaky. Ian has been okay. This is a team that offensively, I'm really not worried about us too much. Do I think we're world beaters? No. But the Cubs we're not ready yet. We're not ready yet. And I think there's definitely still some work to be done. And when they come back to Wrigley, that schedule doesn't really get any easier, even though it's the Nationals and the Cardinals, but we're still playing the Red Sox and the Cardinals during that next homestand. So, and we're going to New York. We're going to New York this weekend. So, you got to do what you can. You got to take care of business as much as you can. We've already dug ourselves in a hole. We cannot dig anything deeper. And if we do, what do you want to do next? Where's the direction of this ball club? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and you mentioned Christopher Morel. I mean, yeah, I think it's a perfect example that if he was probably playing the whole season, the whole first half, he could easily be on that All-Star team. And we'll get into the All-Stars. We'll talk All-Stars for the Cubs, All-Stars for the White Sox, as well as Home Run Derby, which of course Luis Robert announced was going to be in it today as the number 1 seed. So we'll get into that, and I'm sure Gabe has a lot to say. But yeah, staying on the Cubs, it's been just a lot of inconsistencies, and no more so than these last couple of weeks, I think has been kind of just encapsulated how they played the whole year. So yeah, I mean, they have long ways to go, but you are right. They're just a couple moves away from that. And I think that it was disappointing to see again, something else we're going to talk about as he rolled this Chapman trade, because that was one guy that maybe the Cubs had a leg up. Maybe they could, get him back because of course he's played here before. Maybe that was one of the things that they could have, pulled him here with, but it doesn't work out as he goes to the Rangers. But they are a couple moves away. They need the lefties out of the bullpen. Anthony Kay, he's been, like doing all right, but it's definitely not what you want to see out of the bullpen in October or anything like that if they are able to make it there. But Gabe, what has been your vibes that you've gotten from Cubs fans or just in general over the last week or so with the Cubs? It's just been, obviously mostly disappointing. So I'm sure nothing good, right?
Well, I took some time last week to watch them because they were playing an opponent that lies in the White Sox division, the Cleveland Guardians. And I thought they did a good job of taking care of business in that first game, pouncing on them offensively, going for 6+ runs. I believe they scored 10 in that game and beat them 10-1. You got off on a good track, but like you said, the missed opportunity with runners in scoring position early in game 2 of that series on Saturday night put them in a tough spot. And when you don't execute against a Cleveland Guardian squad that's very fundamentally sound and has thumpers in Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, who can change games with just 1 or 2 swings if guys get on base in front of them, such as Andres Jimenez, a Stephen Kwan, and those guys, a Miles Straw, whatever, then you can have some problems, especially when their pitching staff, albeit not the most flashiest one, gets the job done like they do. And that's a team that you got to take advantage of and pounce on early and put the pressure on them. And I don't think they did that in game 2. Game 3 was a game that Cleveland had in the bag, but to come back the way that they did and lose it, that's very tough, especially when you have a series on the line and you're trying to continue the momentum that you worked so hard to gain in the middle of June when you took 2 out of 3 against the Giants. You swept the Pirates. And not only did you sweep the Pirates at home, you swept them on the road. And it looked like things were finally starting to click for this team, as you guys alluded to, how they won 11 out of their last 15 going into the weekend, last week, and just weren't able to capitalize on that. And then to lose the series opener in Milwaukee the way that they did, following that up with the tough game against Cleveland, the rubber match of that series, man, that's tough. But as you talk about, when your bullpen can't finish games for you, and that's something that I'm starting to see myself on the south side into things on 35th and Shields, it's tough. it's very, very tough to win games. Offensively, I do believe that the Cubs have a shot. And the offenses help them stay out in front in most situations. But can you close games? And if you can't close games in a regular season, you know what happens. The likelihood of you getting to October is very slim to none. But we got a lot of time left.
No, yeah, you're right, man. And I think early on in the season, when the Cubs were playing well in April, we saw a glimpse of that. I mean, we saw Fulmer giving up leads, and just about everybody in that bullpen was having a tough time. But the bullpens, it's short. It's funny because they have shored up in the last month or so. They had plenty of guys that were on scoreless streaks and all that. But of course, when it comes down to it, they've had some bad moments in the last couple of weeks that have really shown up. And a guy like Mark Leiter Jr., who was elite at the beginning of the season, and then was kind of went off the rails a little bit, then kind of came back. He still isn't a guy that you tell me we're going to the 8th inning of like a game 7 or something like that. I don't necessarily think you're going to be that comfortable. Miles, you had another point to add though?
Yeah, no, I think pitching is a really good topic with the Cubs. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure out what is the answer for Jameson Taillon.
Yeah,
this is something that I want to know because it's more of like just from the outside looking in, kind of wanting to get into the brain of what the Cubs operations team is thinking. What is if we want to compete this year, we can't keep throwing him out there every single game. I don't know what the answer would be for someone like him, and we have given him a lot of money to be someone who gives us a lot of innings for the next 3-4 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think my numbers can be off, but this has been my big question. Is this like it's like I want to believe the Cubs want to compete, but there's also still this small sense of, hey, we're still rebuilding, so we're going to continue to throw this guy out there. And I'm not saying he shouldn't pitch at all. Is it wrong to give him a few spot starts and maybe work him out of the bullpen? I have no idea. I don't have the answer to this. I'm just curious that if this is something that they really want to turn around, that has to change. It just has to. And we see some teams do this where they keep on throwing that guy out there to kind of crap the bed a little bit every single time because we give them a lot of money. Bro, if you want to be able to win a ball game, put someone out there who's going to give you a quality start every once in a while. And there are some great flashes of really solid stuff in Jameson Taillon. And there's been a few games where he struck out 5, 6, and I think he had maybe one with 10 at some point this year. But at what point? At what point are we going to sit and look back and be like, is this the answer this year? Is this really going to help us? So, not me making a statement, but it's just, for me, that's my big question mark. But because I know that cannot continue.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week with Chris, me and Gabe, and just about the whole Taillon thing, man. You're right. I mean, it's where do you draw a line in a race like this where you have a chance to win the division? I believe like their record, I think, was like, hey man, I gotta check it out, but I think it was like the Cubs are like 2-12 or something like that when he's something nasty when he starts. It's pretty bad. But yeah, you kind of think about those decisions of what they should do. Maybe a phantom IL stint, something, right? It's like send him to Iowa for like a month. Like I don't think this is a guy that would hurt his psyche at all. He's been in the big leagues. He's gone through a lot. I think he's a guy that could take a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily, be scared to do that type of thing. But who knows? I don't know what they're gonna do with Taillon. I think he definitely, needs to have a couple starts off or something to kind of find it. And the thing is, I've heard it too as well, and we've talked about it here, is that the Cubs have a lot of depth when it comes to starting pitching. They could put Wisniewski out there for a couple starts. Yeah, they got plenty of guys. I know Adrian Sampson's coming back from injury. He'll be back soon. It's another guy they could consider as well. So there's plenty of options there if you want to give him a couple starts off. But yeah, something's got to give when it comes to Jameson Taillon, because you can't just be giving up games like that. It's just I don't know if I've seen a guy this off in a while, and a lot of people have talked about it. As I said before, is the injury bug. Is he playing through something? Because that's a guy who's been bitten by the injury bug a lot. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, and go back to kind of what Gabe said too as well about Cleveland is that yeah, man, and you talked about it too. How, what type of team they are, how pesky they are. Yeah, we got Naylord, man. I mean, that just that extra inning win, where where the Cubs were down 6-2 going into the ninth, came back to tied 6-6, and then in extra innings, Josh Naylor hit a ball that was like above his nose, dude. Like that dude that the way that how good of a hitter that guy is crazy, and I've seen him mess with the Sox all these years, and to do it against the Cubs, I'm like, damn, now I know how it feels.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy to see those types of things happen to your team. But yeah, it is what it is, man. I mean, you got to take advantage of these situations, and this is a team that hits 248 with runners in scoring position. Which isn't terrible at all. But I mean, you got obviously like the best teams in baseball hitting like 270, 260 with the Rays and Rangers. So that's what the kind of what you're aiming for, right? But in general, though, with the Cubs, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I know David Ross went off on the umps after the Game 2 win against the Brewers on July 4th. Talking about how he said literally like there's a lot of bullshit going on. There's with stuff with the roof and a bunch of calls, but it was just terrible umping that game. I mean, that was one of the more crazier games of the season. With the last 4 innings were just insane, and the fact that they had Daniel Palencia making his major league debut in those last 2 innings, I thought was crazy. But yeah, I think David Ross spoke for a lot of people, not only a lot of fans, but a lot of managers, I'm sure, when just saying how like it just got to get better. I mean, the umps have just been off their game for this whole season, let alone these past few years. It's just been tough to watch. And as much as he says he knows it's a tough job, but like, man, I mean, some of these calls have just been egregious, and it's just got to get better. But yeah, and when it comes to the All-Star game things, the Cubs had 3 All-Stars. They got Marcus Stroman making his second appearance, Dansby Swanson making his second appearance, and Justin Steele making his first. So I want to start with you, Miles. What did you think about these selections, and were they everything you expected so far?
Yes, for Marcus Stroman and Justin Steele. Dansby? Yeah, sure. he's he's been a great leader. We know he's such a great guy, and I love watching Dansby in the Cubs jersey, but I don't know. I mean,
I think the only
look, my
the
girlfriend's
only
a big Dansby Swanson fan, so I'm gonna be easy on him, but he's not having a terrible year, but we've seen Dansby have some incredible years. 10 home runs, 36 driven in, 4 stolen bases, 260. Sure. Cool. All right. Well, step right up, whatever. I really don't know what to say when it comes to that. All I'm saying is that I think Nico is a little bit more deserving. That's all I'm saying. I think Nico's actually had a very solid year. He's hit 5 home runs and 43 driven in with a 281 average and 91 hits, and he's just been incredible for us this year. Nico has been such a glue for this lineup. I'm very happy about any Cub that gets in, let alone 3. That's incredible. But from just like an overall baseball fan standpoint, good for them. Good for Dansby. Dansby, you see this? I love you. I do.
No, I think no. Actually, look, the reason I think because trust me, you're speaking for a lot of people out there that were actually questioning it too. But the reason he made it was because one, he is the leader in Cubs WAR, 3.1. He has the highest WAR on the team, and mostly it's defense. Its defense is probably the best in all of baseball when it comes to shortstop. It's insane. I think that helps him a lot. And I think that also another thing I will say this too is that the shortstop position is pretty weak offensively. So I think that's another reason. Yeah. So that's another big one that probably helps him out the most. I will say, I will admit that.
I'm used to that category being very, very competitive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Right. Like, I mean, we grew up in the times with Troy Tulowitzki doing work, Jimmy Rollins doing work out there. So, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. So yeah, it's one of those things where it was kind of like, they probably used his WAR a lot more and being like looking at it and being like, okay, well, he's higher up there. And yeah, I definitely get that. And I was honestly, with how weak the second baseman field with the National League was, I was also uh expecting more Horner than Swanson when it comes to just like the players voting and stuff like that. Um, just because of how weak that position is as well. But Gabe, what did you think overall on the Cubs selections for the All-Star game?
I mean, I think for the most part they got it right. I
Mm-hmm.
understand what Miles is saying in regards
Mm-hmm.
to Dansby Swanson. I understand the argument for Nico Horner, but I can't argue against Justin Steele getting selected
Oh
to
yeah.
his first All-Star appearance, and I
Right.
sure as hell can't argue against Marcus Stroman getting in as well, and in his first appearance as a Cub, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
that's real cool to see, and it goes to show you how they got a nice 1-2 punch, and whether or not they're going to keep them together remains to be seen, but I don't see why not if it's working out the way that it has, at least enough to keep you competitive in a National League Central that's not the best and is still
Mm-hmm.
there and available for the taking.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it was cool to see Stroman get it there. I think I've continue to hear about whether they're going to trade him or not and all that. And I forgot where I've heard this, but they were saying that it's strange. I think it was AJ Przinsky that said that like it was strange that this is a guy that is almost begging to stay in Chicago, and for the Cubs not to do anything, but it's come out to that. I think it was like a report that the Cubs are not looking to extend him before the deadline. Um, so that tells me that they're probably just going to let him go into free agency and see what happens. That's what it sounds like, what it looks like. I hope I'm wrong, but it's just what I think what it's come down to. But yeah, it's good to see 3 All-Stars for the Cubs. And Justin Steele, I think honestly should be, if not, I understand the whole thing because I know a lot of people were saying Kershaw should start. But obviously he's not. I believe he's out of the game now. I don't think he's going to play
Yeah,
anymore. Right?
he
Yeah.
is.
David Bednar took his spot. I think I saw him that.
Yep.
So that was that I would be cool with him. Starting the All Star game. But after that, I think you got to go Steele. I don't know what you guys think, but Miles, what do you think? Do you think Justin Steele, unbiasedly, just take off your Cubs hat for a sec? You think he deserves to be the starter at the All Star game?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's been nasty this year, bro. He's been
Mm-hmm.
really nasty this year, and it's kind of just like the maturity that he's had, and the improvements that we've seen with him over the years has been really cool. Yeah, I gotta go with Justin Steele to make that start, and just his control, his location, how he utilizes his breaking pitches. It's incredible. It's incredible. You're never, even as a hitter watching him pitch, I'm uncomfortable as a fan because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just you want to see someone like Justin Steele start the game, because he deserves that. He deserves that recognition.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's kind of seeing his development over the last few years has been pretty cool to see him from the beginning to the end. And
Yeah.
I feel like you really saw those stretches of like, dude, this guy's gonna be a stud. I mean, he came in as a reliever and had got some big outs. So in 21, so it was cool to see, and I love his energy, and he really is like a baby John Lester, like, and
Yeah.
in many ways. So and even John Lester's taking him under his wing over in the offseason. So I think it's cool that they're playing into that. But Gabe, what do you think? I mean, this is obviously a crowded field. I mean, you got the guys like Zach Gallen, Spencer Strider, even Bryce Elder, dude. I mean, he's having a hell of a season. So there's plenty of options. But do you think Steele deserves it though?
I haven't watched enough of Steele, I'll be honest, to say
Okay.
that. But after hearing you guys talk about him, I feel like I need to watch him more as the course of the season goes along in the second half. And I'm damn sure gonna make sure to check out some of his highlights. But just seeing the names of the pitchers that are representing the National League among starters, I think the guy that's more than likely gonna get the ball from Thompson of the Phillies, who's the manager of the National League team, by way of Philly making the World Series a year ago, is gonna be Spencer Strider, the Atlanta Braves. I think that's who the fans want to see. We know that he's a strikeout machine. I believe he's leading the league in strikeouts right now with 155. He has a 10-2 record with a 3.66 ERA, and that's much higher than what it was a year ago. But when this dude is on the mound, he's lights out, and he's providing quality starts more often than not, and his stuff looks unhittable. And I think that's the guy that's more than likely going to get the ball, especially with the year that Atlanta has had. And I believe Atlanta has, what, 8 All-Stars, which is the most since the Cubs in 2008. So it's like that in my eyes, that's who's getting it more than likely. I think Thompson's going to go with a National League East guy, and I think it's more than likely going to be Spencer Strider because that's who the fans want to see, and I think that's the team that has come to show up and show out in Seattle.
Yeah, you made some good points, man. You're right. And I think it's one of those things that does play into it. I think a lot of people don't think about that. It does play into that, like, the fact that the managers have seen these guys and playing their division and all that, and they haven't seen Steele that much. And even for Chicago being the third biggest market in the nation when it comes to baseball, Justin Steele isn't really talked about that much. I feel like more people talk about Marcus Stroman. Yeah, they talk about more about Marcus Stroman. Which is fine with me in general, like when it comes to, giving some recognition to Marcus Stroman. But no, yeah, Steele, I think over the next few years, I think we'll gain a little more traction if he continues to pitch like this for sure. And yeah, if he doesn't get it, Strider is a good guy to have a start for the National League. He's electric, and I feel like he's out there striking out 9 or 10 guys a night. So yeah, that'd be definitely a good candidate as well. For the Cubs, they go into the All-Star break with 2 more counting tonight as they're playing, Steele's pitching tonight against the Brewers, at 2 more, counting tonight, 2 more games against the Brewers, and then 3 at New York, as Miles mentioned earlier. That's going to be awesome to see the Cubs go at the Yankees, unfortunately without Judge, but the Cubs, of course, are going to welcome Carlos Rodon, back to Major League Baseball on Friday. I know. I was like, my buddy who's a Yankee fan was telling me, he's like, Carlos Rodon's coming back on July 7th. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. That's pretty cool. I got to watch that game. And then I saw that it was against the Cubs. I was like, oh, damn. And even then I was like, I know, even then I obviously don't expect him to go, 7, 8 shutout innings. I mean, now who knows how he's going to look? Obviously, it's going to be his first start. But we'll see. It should be exciting nonetheless. So we'll switch over to the White Sox now. They're 36-47, 3-3 in their last 6 games. And, Gabe talked a little bit about the bullpen disappointments in the last couple of days. I mean, Joe Kelly in the last week has had a couple blown saves. It's been rough there. But like I said, just like the Cubs, they're 7 games back, I believe, going into today. And, just a lot of rough games, when it comes to Andrews also, kind of cost him a game there with a late error against Oakland. But Gabe, man, over the last week, what have you seen with them and this stretch where I made a point to kind of see the last 6 games because with a team like this, I think you really, to get the optimism up, you really got to put these games into a smaller bucket and take it and go. And I think even 3-3 is a good stretch for a team that's been struggling like this.
3-3 is a good stretch.
Yeah.
But when you have a 7-game road trip and you go 3-4 and you happen to lose 2 out of 3 to a team that's on pace to lose over 120 games, that's rough. Especially when you lose 2 out of 3 to not only a team that's on pace to lose 120 games, but a team that you had chances against. Anytime you're going up against a young pitcher in Luis Medina, who has an ERA over 6, and you have the bases loaded at the top of the first and then top of the second. And in those situations, albeit with 2 outs in both instances, you only cash in 1 run. You give teams like that life. And then as a result, Oakland pounced on them and they were able to take game 1. And even when the White Sox rallied back in the game and cut the lead to within 2, certain decisions made by Pedro Grifol leave you sometimes scratching your head. And I want to make it clear when I say this about Pedro Grifol, I'm not blaming him for all of this. This is a front office problem. This is an ownership problem. And it's also on some of these players. I could go on and on about how this team is among the bottom of the league in OPS, how this team is among the bottom in on-base percentage. Not going to do that because I'll be here all night. But I say all that to say, you got to take advantage of opportunities. Last week was a golden opportunity to gain ground. Losing 1 game, okay, fine. Losing the second game, when you scratch and claw your way back after having control in the game early, it's like every time the White Sox get a lead and you watching this team, you're asking yourself, how in the hell are they going to find a way to hold on to it? Even if you're an optimistic fan, how they going to find a way? Most fans will say, oh, well, how they going to blow it this time? I'm not one of those fans. But this bullpen has been one in which is taxed. And largely because the starters cannot go 6 innings consistently, and they can't keep runners off the base path. And what I mean by that is whether that's being given up hits, or in the cases of, let's say, Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech, walks, and their failures and inability to keep the walk rate down. That's what's hurting this team, on top of a lack of play discipline. And I'm going to just say this real quick to a lot of White Sox fans that may listen to your show. I don't want to hear a damn thing about Andrew Benintendi, because Andrew Benintendi is not the problem. Andrew Benintendi is a guy who knows how to work counts, knows how to work at bats, knows how to get on base at a high level, something which a lot of guys on this team do not know how to do. When I watch this team, it's 9 guys in the lineup. I see 9 different individual plate approaches at the dish. And not a single one of them, outside of a select few, is dependent on how can I find a way to get on base in order to make the next at-bat for my teammate to drive me home. I don't see that. I see guys that sometimes I can't help but ask myself, are they playing for their numbers? Or are they playing for recognition personally? But, you know, I'm not trying to question guys' commitment to winning. But, you know, this was something that 6 years ago, I followed very closely and carefully with the White Sox when they were in the midst of their rebuild, looking at these prospects down in Charlotte, Birmingham, Winston-Salem. Because some of these guys are around the same age as me, and I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be the golden age of White Sox baseball. We've gone from that to not trying to figure out, where do we go from here? In spite of the fact that you play in a division that's there for the taking. But when you don't take care of business, starting out the season in the month of April the way that they did, you put yourself in such a deep hole to where when you lose games like they did in the series opener against Toronto, you find yourself asking, what's next? Or how can they find a way to rebound and bounce back from this? Because the White Sox have been in a lot of games. White Sox have had the lead in all 6 of the games that you're talking about, which they went 3-3. Most of which they had a lead of at least 2 runs or more. And you're still not able to finish the business. That is a problem. And it's going to get even harder when you have Michael Kopech now on the IL, and he's not returning to All-Star break, and Mike Clevenger on the IL, and you only got 3 starting pitchers that are fully healthy. And as of this evening, depending on the rain delay, you got Lance Lynn taking the ball, and we don't know which version of Lance Lynn we're going to get consistently on a night-to-night basis. Every 5 days he takes the ball. That's a huge problem. And this offense needs some work. Even though when they were on the road, they put up runs, such as when they beat the Angels, where they went and scored 11. And then they scored 9 to close out that series. They scored 20 runs in the final 2 games of that series to get a split. They're going to have that consistently if they want to change the morale around this city and this fan base, which, in spite of them sometimes being irrational, I must say it, they deserve a winner. They do. But like Snoop said in The Wire, deserve ain't got nothing to do with it. What you gonna do? And Rick Hahn gotta be real too. And I wish that some of the media in this city that cover White Sox baseball would ask the tough questions. Not only to Rick Hahn, but Pedro Grifol. Because this shit demands answers. It demands answers. I don't care if it satisfies the fan base or not, but we got to start watching games. And we got to start assessing this team based off of games and the performances of the players with every at bat and every pitch. We have to, because some people ain't watching. It's a lot of scoreboard watchers out here. But if you watch these games, it ain't hard to see what the problem is. And basically with the White Sox, it's just this. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Everybody need to come together. If you ain't trying to come together, don't jump on a bandwagon if shit get good.
I mean, mic drop. I mean,
Oh,
they know nobody says it better than Gabe when it comes to the White Sox. I guarantee you that. And you said it. And a couple of things that you said that I wanted to point out was the fact that you're right. Deserving has nothing to do with it, and that's the name of the game with every sport, right? It's like every sport has a story, and everybody's like, this team deserves this and that. And the White Sox for sure. Even as a Cubs fan, man, White Sox deserve a winning team. And at the end of the day, the sport doesn't care about that. And the players' skills, whenever just because they have talent doesn't mean it's going to work well together. And that's been the question with the White Sox for the past few years, is that they have all the talent in the world, and they do. They got guys like Eloy, they got guys like Robert, obviously, and guys like Cease, and even them all on one team. It hasn't worked out just yet. So it's been a rough go, but hopefully, like I said with the Cubs, is that and we've been saying for a while now, is that these next few weeks are going to be big as to what they do. And these two teams are 7 games back in a division two divisions that are just atrocious. But when you have a chance, I mean, you got to make some decisions that, hey, could either help or, I guess, for lack of a better word, give up, honestly. So we'll see where these two teams go. And hopefully it's to buy, because I think that's what the city of Chicago needs, with these two teams in the competitive, stance. So, Miles, what about you? What's been your thoughts on the Sox these last couple of weeks? Because, like I said, the Cubs and the White Sox in similar boats, man.
Yeah, no, it sucks. It sucks seeing just a fellow Chicago team have the struggles that they've been having, and I can't put it better than the way Gabe put it. But White Sox fans need answers, man. They need answers. This is a team that was considered to be much more competitive than the Cubs going into 2023, and my expectations were high for them, and for the most part, I've held out as much hope for this ball club as I can. But it's understanding if someone can be a little bit discouraged. Some of those losses that they took in Oakland specifically, from what I saw, kind of those first 2 games of that series, it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch, and you want to see guys go out there and play well. And Tim Anderson hasn't really been able to figure it out this year. I still think he's an extremely talented individual. I think for me, I would love to know kind of what is going on within the clubhouse. What are the conversations that Rick Hahn is having with Pedro Grifol? What is the goal going forward? Are they gonna kind of blow this thing up and say, hey, this isn't working? Or is Rick Hahn really invested in this team like he says he is? If you guys remember, he had that big press conference that he had at the beginning of the year after things were they went on a massive losing streak in April. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with the White Sox. And when I was coming home from Michigan yesterday, I look at what I think is a beautiful stadium and guaranteed rate field, aside from the freaking name. It's awesome. It's awesome seeing a packed house like that, and then
Yeah.
White Sox fans really care about this ball club, man. And I looked at my mom and I was like, man, as much as people talk about the Sox fan base and how they feel like fans don't show up, the fans are showing up to support this year. They deserve a winning ball club. They deserve what they've been asking for. So yeah, I mean, that's really where I'm at. That's really where I'm at with it, and just yeah, man, I'm supporting the boys on the South Side. And inconsistencies, like what Gabe said when he said, if it's not one thing, it's another. Yeah. If this team is hitting well, then the pitching is really letting them down. And what's different about the Sox from the Cubs is that another good point that Gabe made is that there are some massively different approaches on this team at the plate. Way different. We're looking at some guys worked the count very well. Angie Benintendi works the count very well. Then I'm seeing some guys swing at absolute dog crap. And Eloy Jimenez, who has still been very productive for this ball club, but still the kind of the approaches within this lineup are vastly different from one another. One of the best things you can do is a ball club. Try to get everyone in sync, man. That's like one of the you got to try to get everyone to buy in the same way. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with the White Sox. That's where I'm at, and I want to see those boys win because I know it is a party on the South Side when that team is on.
Oh, for sure. And I think the reason why the fans who do show up are showing up is because of the fact that we can't help but be in amazement of the fact that this team, in spite of all their struggles and transgressions, are only 7 games back. And I know people say, well, you shouldn't look at the standings with this team. This team is done. Man, I've been watching baseball all my life. You don't know what the hell can happen in a matter of a week or two if a team finds something or gets right. Does this team need a miracle? Yeah, I would say that they do. And yeah, the plate approaches individually are horrible. But you talk about Eloy Jimenez, I'm going to talk about someone who the fan base don't even want to talk about, but we got to get real about him, and that's Jake Burger. I love Jake Burger. I love the power that he can provide on any given day when he's hot. But what I don't like about Jake Burger is his lack of play discipline. What I don't like about Jake Burger is that Jake Burger finds a lot of pitches so hittable that he'll swing at a slider that's low and away on a 3-2 count that's ball 4, thinking he can elevate it when he can't. But we love the home run ball. We love the fact that he came back from 2 torn Achilles. I respect that. And I don't take anything away from his story and his comeback and his battles with mental health and none of that. That deserves to be lauded. But if you want this guy to be your future third baseman, you should also want this guy to be a very disciplined hitter, because if he can ever find a way to put it together on top of the talent that he has with his power, you could mess around and have a quality third baseman on your hand in the case that Yoan Moncada's health doesn't pan out. Otherwise, you got a whole bunch of problems. You already need a everyday second baseman in your lineup. Zach Remillard has performed incredibly coming from where he came from in Charlotte. However, how long can we continue to rely upon that from a guy that's been a minor league journeyman? And even though his story should be a testimony to these young guys of why you shouldn't take the opportunities that you have in the league for granted, I mean, you can keep trying to preach to some of these guys, but some of these guys just ain't going to be able to stay here no matter what. But the thing that hurts me the most is when I see a guy like Lucas Giolito going on the record saying, I want to stay in Chicago. I want to help this team find a way to get through the mud and go to the top of the AL Central in 2023. Like that hurts me when I'm at a game and I'm looking at him pitch well, but because we can't hold leads, I'm thinking, am I watching Lucas Giolito's last game on 35th Street? Is that where we've come? 7 years from when this all started and Lucas Giolito was one of the building blocks that you were promoting to the fan base after acquiring him in the Adam Eaton trade with the Washington Nationals? Is that really where we've come? And then, Rick Hahn, you want to meet up with media every homestand, but when it comes to actually answering the questions from the fans that actually have been long-time season ticket holders at the park every single day, every weekend, you deflect. I don't really care much about Sox Fest, but if there's one thing that I did like about Sox Fest going as a kid, it was seeing the interactions between general managers and fans. We haven't had that shit since 2020 when we thought we were going up. Now you have some explaining to do. And I think it's really on the Chicago media to start asking tougher questions, because it was a level of expectations that we used to have in this city, and that was winning. I think that's become lost now. And I think that's why you see the state of both of these ball clubs, as well as Chicago sports in general, in such a flux, in spite of the greatness of Luis Robert, who, man, is making games so much fun to watch. And I think a lot of Chicago sports fans need to appreciate him, regardless of where the White Sox are in the standings, because he's looking like the best damn athlete in the city right now.
Yeah, no, that's the next thing I was going to ask you about was, obviously Luis Robert Jr. into his first All-Star game. But real quick, when you talk about Lucas Giolito, yeah, that's one guy that I think if I was a White Sox fan, I wouldn't want to lose. I mean, he's not only great for the team, but I think he's great for the city. He's great for all in many ways. He's such a versatile guy. Of course, he's a member of the John Boy media crew. He's on the Royals rotation a lot, so he has a great personality, and he's showing this year. And I love the thing about Giolito that I think is so valuable with a type of player like that is the resilience that he has, because he's been through so much on the field when it comes to, having a good season, being an all-star, then having a horrible season, and then bouncing back from that. He's had to bounce back from a lot of things. And I think any team would like a guy like that on their team. And I think that's the thing about, this coming to trade deadline, is that a lot of teams are going to want that guy, and so we'll see what happens, whether it be now or in the offseason, if he ends up not re-signing. But real quick, and we'll start with Miles' thoughts on, Miles, obviously, like I said, Luis Robert Jr. is an all-star. He's also in the home run derby as the number 1 seed, as we'll talk about. But what do you think that means for the city of Chicago? As he's the first center fielder to rep the Sox in the All-Star game since Chet Lemon in 1970.
That's quite the stat you pulled out there. It's awesome. It's awesome. I think he should be starting. Me personally, I think he should be starting. He's been an absolute beast this year. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Luis Robert, he plays like this really cool, nonchalant kind of swag that he walks around with, and it just works for him too. He's so good, and it really feels like he's not trying. Like it's just this game. It feels like the game comes Gabe knows what I'm talking about. It feels like it just comes very easy to him. And even whenever I'm going to a Sox game and I'm watching him chase down a fly ball, or I'm seeing his hands go through the zone, I'm like, bro, is there a level above that you're trying to get to? Because why is this so easy for you? Like, what's wrong with you? Stop. So it's awesome. It's gonna be really cool watching him in the home run derby. And it's also, gonna put more eyes on him as well, because he's a rock star. He's one of those guys in the game of baseball where it's this is going to be crazy to say, but he should be one of the faces of baseball, in my personal opinion, just because of what he brings to this game. So I love it. I love him in the home run derby. I think he should be starting, but we're happy that he's in the All-Star game in general. He's going to shine. And maybe he does start with Judge going down. I don't know. I think that would make sense, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love it. I'm 100% on board for it. It'd be cool to kind of see Justin Steele start and pitch against Luis Robert in the All-Star game. It's cool. It was the last time it was like Chris Bryant versus Chris Sale, and then so, and I know there were some other Cubs in that All-Star game as well. But that's the moment that I remember, not because it was the Cubs that home run off the Sox in the All-Star game. It's just that's cool. The crosstown matches in the All-Star game is super cool to me. So I'm 100% down for it, and great job by Luis Robert, and it just goes up from here for it.
Yeah, what about you, Gabe? What are your thoughts overall on just him making it?
It's an incredible honor for an incredible player, and a player who I think, after going through what he went through in early April, after his failure to hustle out a ground ball and getting benched, allowed that to transform him into what you see today. I always felt like, from several years ago, looking at the prospect list and looking at the highlights, that Luis Robert was the one. I really did. I just felt like he needed to have a season in which he was fully healthy in order to showcase it. I grew up in the 90s watching Sox baseball with Frank Thomas, and that was my guy. And that's when I knew that this White Sox were my team. Watching Luis Robert takes me back to that. And when I see Luis Robert, I see a guy that could be the greatest player in franchise history to ever don White Sox pinstripes. I just do. And I hope that he continues to build off of this and use this as motivation, because I think the best is yet to come. And it's just scary, man, how this dude could just change games with the swing of his bat. And it's one of the smoothest swings I've ever seen. And, and then you combine that with his glove, man, and the way he's able to just like effortlessly track down fly balls. and get incredible reads on him. When this dude is locked in up here on top of with his physical gifts, like Mal said, he makes the game look so damn easy to where I feel like I could play it through his lens watching him. And, you know, and I have tickets off the left field line in 152, and I've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of Luis Robert bombs this year. And when you hear that sound of the bat, man, it's a beautiful sound. And it's players like him that are the reason why, as a White Sox fan, lifelong, you want to see this team be so great, because these guys are around my age. And, you know, same with Tim Anderson in the midst of his struggles. I know some White Sox fans have turned on him, but like, that's still my dude. But when I see Luis, I see the future face of this franchise, and a guy that's slowly but surely cementing himself as the face of this franchise for years to come. And I hope it's here for the next decade and beyond.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think, you know, as you said before, he's for sure kind of slowly making himself probably the best athlete in the city of Chicago right now. And that's, you know, he's up there with the Fields, he's up there, you know, and those types of players. So yeah, I love to see it, dude. And it's good to see that he's not only an all-star, but I think honestly, with Trout and Judge being out, he has a really good chance now of starting, and he deserves that for sure. All right, now the Sox, of course, heading into the All-Star break, they got counting today. They got 2 more against Toronto and then 3 against St. Louis. So that'd be a pair of good matchups there, especially against the Cardinals. And they'll be at home as well. Moving on, I wanted to talk to you guys about the trade that happened this week, which was Aroldis Chapman. He went from the Royals to the Rangers. This is a guy who has bounced back and has had a great season with the Royals. He was kind of in the setup role. Now he has a couple saves, so he hasn't necessarily been the main closer for the Royals. So I think that might have helped him, honestly. Maybe he needed a little bit of a change of role, and it's helped them so far. And I think this is a huge move for the Rangers, a team that definitely needed some bullpen help, just like the Cubs. And I think, like I said, I kept mentioning, you know, maybe there's a possibility the Cubs could go out and get him. Unfortunately, it was the Rangers, guy in the long run. So, Miles, what do you think about this move for the Rangers and what this can do? This is a team that obviously, you know, they are one of the best teams in baseball right now. They have the best run differential in the league. As I mentioned before, they hit like 279 with guys runners in scoring position. They're one of the best offenses. They're missing just a couple pieces. There still might be a couple pieces away when it comes to, they still need some more bullpen help in general. But they're right there, man. 3 games ahead and as the leader in the Western Division for the AL.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot for this ball club. And really, I think it couldn't be timed any better, especially the Astros are kind of riding their tails a little bit right now, kind of gaining ground on them. Astros are 8-2 in their last 10 games, and so they're right there. I like Chapman a lot. I think Chapman's going to bring some entertaining matchups to that very, very fun division to watch. The Rangers are hot. Jonah Heim, Josh Jung, Adolis Garcia. This is a great ball club, and even in spite of DeGrom going down, they have just been really playing with a lot of authority and establishing their dominance in that division. So I like Chapman there because he really adds that. He adds more of that to that Rangers ball club, and it's gonna be fun. Now, unfortunately, we got Ohtani and Trout, not in the best condition health wise. But I would love to see a Chapman versus Ohtani matchup. I think that's something that I would love to see personally, or Chapman versus Trout. I think that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool to see, especially if the Angels are still, you know, kind of fighting at that time whenever these 2 teams play each other. Now I don't know when they play each other, but I know they have to play each other at least 1 or 2 more times this year, being in that same division. And I know it's different. Now the scheduling's kind of, you know, it's been shifted in terms of every team playing against each other. But I like Chapman in that division. There's a lot of good offense in that division. Chapman versus the Astros. Are you kidding me? What? Well, you got the Rangers and the Astros. Maybe the Rangers are in Houston, and I don't know. I get to see a cool scenario coming out of that. I just, you know, I love Chapman in that division because it's going to be some fun matchups. Mark my words.
What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the move for Chapman from Texas perspective. They're going all in. and he can serve as a left-handed complement to Josh Sborz. And I think the plan right now for Bruce Bochy and his staff, based on what I've been reading, is for him to serve as a setup man to Will Smith, who's their closer, but
Mhm.
he's been kind of shaky in that role a little bit. And Texas bullpen needed some help on the back end. And let's say in the event that Will Smith isn't able to hold it down, you can also call on the road as Chapman to close games in the ninth with the heat that he has. And you talk about Miles, how you would love to see him go up against Shohei Ohtani. And you talk about the Astros, when they get a healthy Jordan back in the mix, let's say if they still 3 games up or 3 games down against Houston, and that AL West is still on the line, I would love to see that in the latter half of a game in the back 9, anywhere between the 8th and 9th innings, if not extras. And that would be a hell of a pitching matchup if you want to talk about lefty versus lefty situations. But I like to move a lot for Texas because I think it helps them shore up the back line of their bullpen, which I got a chance to see personally last week actually a couple weeks ago against the White Sox, where they did happen to blow a game in spite of their great offense. So I understand, why they would make a move like that. It just shows that they committed to winning in a division that they have control over. And I think it's going to come down to the end and be one of the more exciting division races to watch in the American League outside of what's transpiring in the East with the Rays and the Orioles.
Yeah, you're right. And I think we saw it, this past weekend, that 4-game series where the Astros took it to the Rangers and just kind of saying, "Hey, we're still here and we're going to be here all season long." I think that was a good kind of a wake up call for the Rangers because they need it. I mean, there's a team that that's been kind of on cruise control a little bit, and I think they need a little bit of a nudge from the Astros, and I think because they've been doing so well. So, yeah, it's gonna be a great race, and I think it was cool to see also Chapman take on Altuve, which was one of the first times he faced him since that walk-off home run. I think it was in 19. He's faced him, I think, a couple times since then, but it was cool to see him again in such a big matchup. And so we'll see what happens with that. But it's cool to see the trade deadline starting a little earlier than people expected. I know it usually doesn't happen. I think, I've heard plenty of people say the one of the main reasons it doesn't happen is because the sellers, for leverage, they don't want to give a guy up too early because they might not, get as much back. So I get that. So kind of moving on to the main event. Of course, the All-Star game and Home Run Derby take place next week. Of course, All-Star weekend All-Star week kind of starts Saturday and Sunday. Of course, I know that Major League Baseball has the draft going on. They have a bunch of other stuff going on. So that's cool to see. When it comes to the Home Run Derby, we'll start there. The field came out officially, and most of the guys were out already, but they added Adolis Garcia, who we talked about it last week. One of the guys we wanted to see in there. And of course, we all wanted Luis Robert in there. And of course, he was also announced. But looking at the matchups real quick, it was really cool to see Luis Robert as not only getting into the home run derby, but also being named the number 1 seed. He owns a tiebreaker of most home runs since June 15th against I believe it was Alonso, right? Yeah, they had
Pete Alonso.
Pete Alonso with 25. So Luis Robert Jr. taking on Adley Rutschman of the Baltimore Orioles, who has 11 home runs there. But I mean, that guy, I could see him kind of surprising people with the type of pop he has. I think he's going to go from the left side. That's my guess. I think he has more from the left side because he's a switch hitter. But Luis Robert, man, I think he looks made for the Home Run Derby, as I've talked about before. Also, Adolis Garcia, the 4th seed, is going to take on Randy Arozarena, who's the 5th seed. I think that's going to be one of the more fun matchups just because it's 2 guys from Cuban descent, just going at it. And I think they're going to be talking a lot of smack. I know they were even teammates, I think, in the Cardinals minor league system. So I think that's another thing, too, that's going to be pretty cool. Pete Alonso, who's won it twice already, going to take on Julio Rodriguez, who took him out last year, which I think that's another cool thing about that. Mookie Betts, who apparently was has been stressing all these years to not be in it. He doesn't he doesn't want to be in the home run derby. I think his wife got him to do it or something like that. But it's cool to see him doing it and have the matchup of Vladdy Jr., who's going to be in it once again, who has 13 home runs this year. And it's one of those things that people have been talking about. Maybe, it could awaken his home run swing, and it could take him to new heights this season. But what are you guys' thoughts on these matchups overall? Is there any matchup you guys are looking for in particular, some surprises or guys that you expected to be in there? We'll start with you, Gabe. Anything that stands out from this home run derby field?
just the fact that a White Sox player is in it, because
Yep.
I'm not used to seeing too many White Sox players in home run derbies. You know, when Frank Thomas won, I was 2 years old, so I didn't get a chance to see him in the home run derbies. He was most of the time on the sidelines chilling at the All-Star game. So just to see Luis Robert with the #1 seed, which I wasn't expecting, having a chance to actually take this thing, I like it. Even though he has a loaded field to go up against with the defending champ, I believe, or not the defending champ, but he's won like what 2 out of the last 3 of Pete Alonso.
Yep.
And then going up against his native countrymen, either in Adolis Garcia or Randy Arozarena, should he take care of business against Adley Rushman. I think that'll serve as some motivation for him. And I think that's why he joined, because he was telling Vinny Duber of CHGO Sports prior to tonight when the Sox were set to take on Toronto that he wanted to have a chance to take part in the event to compete against his fellow countrymen. So that'll be cool. And I'm eager to see what Julio Rodriguez is gonna do after the show that he put on last year and being the face and the host of this event in the Emerald City, knowing that those fans are gonna be loud when he comes up to the plate. Like, that's gonna be a hell of a first round matchup. So I'm intrigued to see what those two young guys do, especially in a sport that I think still needs to do a better job of promoting their young stars.
Oh yeah, you're right. And I think also, it was interesting to see not, the defending champ with Soto not coming back into it, but it's all good. They got plenty of guys out there, and yeah, it's cool to see guys that are the home guys like Julio Rodriguez take a swing in his home ballpark. And also another thing too was when I mentioned that Betts, he didn't want to be in it. Another thing I heard that kind of pushed him to do it was he wanted to promote Black culture more, especially when it comes to the big stage in baseball. So that was good to see as well. Miles, so what are your thoughts on this whole Homer Derby field as it stands?
Oh, I love it. I think Luis Robert is gonna make quick work in the first round. I got Pete Alonso beating Julio Rodriguez, but Julio's gonna put up a good fight. It's just we got Pistol Pete. Now, Mookie. I like Mookie.
Oh yeah.
There's like these clips of Mookie, and I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it, where it was like a spring training, it was like live BP during a spring training match. By the way, the Cardinals just took the lead against the Marlins in the 9th. Jordan Walker. Sorry, I'm watching the game as I'm talking.
He continues to be great. I'm gonna get a first-hand view of him this weekend.
Yeah. Jordan Walker, go ahead, 2-run home run. I think they're like 1 strike away. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. That's awesome. Because we're talking about Black culture and baseball.
Jordan Walker.
You know what I mean? So, going back to what I was saying, there's like a clip of Mookie Betts like hitting live BP, and then he just catching a barrel, and it's just he just has a sweet swing. And when Mookie Betts, when he's able to kind of catch the ball in the barrel of his bat, it's just, I don't know, something about it, man. Something about it just sounds really good. And he's had a few of those this year, and he really just knows how to just drive the ball. So that is the matchup that I'm looking forward to the most, because you got Vladdy Jr., who really hasn't hit a lot of home runs this year, and maybe this is his way of saying, hey, I'm still Vladdy Guerrero Jr. So it's going to be awesome. A lot of entertaining personalities, and Adolis Garcia, big, swole, bulky mother. And then Randy Rose. And I just want to see Randy Rosarena just cross his arms after he just, I don't know, if he wins, you got to cross your arms and do the pose. That's my favorite celebration. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for this. And so, great personalities, a lot of representation. That's the biggest thing. Me personally, as someone who has grown up loving this game and is a fan of a ball club that I feel like doesn't always represent everyone, in the area that we live in, and in general, for me, representation in baseball is huge. As someone who has grown up feeling very underrepresented in so many different teams and Cubs games I've gone to, so this is awesome to me, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned, with Mookie Betts and how good he is. I think that's my pick for who's gonna win. I think, honestly, I think it's really hard to see anyone beating him with how good he is at hitting line drives, especially in that stadium. I think it would help him a lot. I mean, he's a guy who's got 22 homers this year. But a lot of people have been saying too that with Rosarena, like, that dude lives for these stages. So they wouldn't wouldn't be surprised if this dude ends up winning it. But how cool would it be a second round match with Robert versus Rosarena, dude. Like that would just
That's
be
what I'm looking forward to the most. Either
yeah.
Robert or Rosarena or Robert or Garcia. To me, that semifinal round, just looking at the bracket, I'm like, man, that's going to be the toughest road for Luis as far as trying to get to the finals. I
Mm-hmm.
could see Mookie Betts. I could see Vlad Jr. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Vlad been hitting lately. He hit that
Mm-hmm.
home run yesterday and came down that third baseline like this. So he looked like he getting warmed up at the right time. When I saw that he was participating in it, I wouldn't be shocked. And we all know what he did his first go round in Cleveland, hit 93 of those things and coming up short to Pete Alonso. But damn, did he put on a show? I wouldn't. This is a loaded field. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
loaded field, and I think any one of these guys, with the exception of Rushman, no disrespect,
Mm-hmm.
could probably win this event fairly
Yeah.
easy if they get hot and get on the road.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think those matchups in that you're right. It's probably the hardest road that at least Robert has. But yeah, with Vlad, no doubt about it, you can't sleep on him whatsoever. I mean, this guy obviously can pop so many homers in the span of 4 minutes. So, yeah, it's gonna be really exciting to see how these guys take on each other and kind of put together another celebration of home runs because I love to see it. Home run derby is one of the best all-star events in all sports. It's good to see. Moving on to the actual rosters that came out this weekend, as of course we've already talked about the Chicago side of things with 4 representatives in the game itself from Chicago. But for you guys, I mean, was there anything that stood out from the rosters itself? Of course, the rosters are headlined by a pair of teams, honestly, when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays and the Texas Rangers having the most all stars there. And deservedly so. I mean, those are guys that have an immense amount of talent. But there were a lot of snubs as well. I mean, you talk about guys like Fernando Tatis Jr. for a particular reason, of course. I'm sure is not there. But when you got also guys like Wander Franco, who like obviously made it, but he wasn't elected by to be for as on the roster from the beginning. So a lot of people were mad about that. But he was able to make it. He of course is on there now. But anything like did stand out to you guys? There's also surprises like, good to see guys like, Brent Rooker making it from the Oakland Athletics there. Of course, every team needs one, but when they pick the right guy, I think it also says a lot. And of course, you got young guys like Josh Young, and stuff like that. And of course, Randy Rosarena making it as well. But anything that stand out for you guys in particular, Miles, we'll start with you. Anybody from the All-Star game that you're happy to see there or just anything that stands out overall from the rosters?
Man, nothing. I think this is actually one of the first years, specifically for the AL. I'm looking at everyone, and to me, it all just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
For all these guys that are there, just I don't feel like there's anyone in the AL specifically that's undeserving, and I'm not surprised by any of these players being there. So I think that's awesome. In the National League, more or less of the same. And I think it's great to see Ozzy back in the All-Star game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of having a bit of a tough year last year for multiple reasons. So to see him back there, that's great. He's played such a big role in the Braves having so much success this year. Nick Castellanos, who I still feel like isn't talked about enough, he's been absolutely destroying baseballs this year, and not in a sense where he's just hitting everything over the wall. No, he's always been good at just finding ways to get on base, and I think he's had a very underappreciated baseball career for the most part. And so that's something that's always bothered me. So it's great to see him, doing his thing and making it there. And I do think it is a little bit unfair that Nico Horner is not in this game, just because of how solid he's been this year. And he's an all-star to us Cubs fans. He really is. Nico's been an absolute stud for us. So overall, great on all levels. And I'm very happy with what I'm seeing right now, and especially because Freddie Freeman is indeed starting at first base.
Oh yeah, you know what, Miles. Also wanted to ask you, what did you think about Tatis not making it, and do you agree with that? Yes or no?
Oof. That's a question. I think for the baseball purist, I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
For people who like a good clean game, and I understand both sides when it comes to it, because whether his intentions were good or malicious, it still happened, and there are players who work to get to where he is without doing those things, being paid a hell of a lot less. I get it. Also, for the other argument is that you just because whatever performance enhancing, whatever it is, you still got to know how to hit a baseball in a time where pitchers are throwing faster than ever. You still got to know how to hit, man. Just because you got big muscles and everything, or whatever the case is, man, they're bringing it. I'm watching Jordan Hicks right now throw 101 to the back foot. Like, come on, man, we still got to know how to hit a baseball. So, really, I guess all I can say is that it's like I understand both sides to it. But I hope that we do find some sort of way to appreciate Fernando down the line. It's gonna take some time. You just can't be a dickhead going forward. That's just like the best way of putting it. You got to be humble about it, and it's great that you're embracing the villain role. But just know that you're still coming off as a dickhead. But you're a great ball player. But you know what whatever happened happened. So I'm not surprised by it, but I'm hoping that people still recognize that he is a good ball player. Just a dickhead.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right. I think make some good points on that. And like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's gonna take time. And I think that it'll all be forgiven sooner rather than later. I know no doubt about it. Because I know some people were like, oh, is it gonna keep happening? Are they gonna keep doing it? I don't think so. I think, you got a guy like Nelson Cruz who's been caught with it. All was forgiven with him. He's been to the All-Star game, home run derby, and stuff like that. So it is what it is. And I do like that they did it now, in the fact that like it's kind of a little bit of a nudge to him, saying, hey, we didn't forget what you did, and put your head on straight and continue to play the game right if you are doing it right now the right way. And I hope that it only benefits him in the end, because he's a hell of a talent, regardless of what he was doing, because like you said, you got to know how to hit a baseball. And he's talented in multiple ways and more than just hitting. So I definitely get why they did it. And I'm sure he'll be on an All-Star team sooner rather than later. But Gabe, what are your thoughts overall on the All-Star roster? But as well, I'll ask you the same question of the Tatis thing in general.
Well, first and foremost, on the Tatis Jr. situation, I don't know what that was about. Even though I know the situation with the PDs could have played a role in that, it's a part of me that wonders whether or not the lack of team success played a role in that. Because if you think about it, San Diego, with the payroll that they had, fresh off of an NLCS appearance where they got knocked out by the Phillies last year, they were expected to do major things. And they haven't as a ball club. And I think oftentimes when you are depending on getting selected into the All-Star game as a reserve, the managers and the skippers who have the right to vote on that take that into account. And I think that might have played a role as to why a guy like Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who's been exceptional, managed to get in over Fernando Tatis, and they had to pick one or the other between Soto or Tatis to represent San Diego. I don't think they were going to be empty-handed because of the talent that they have, but that's tough. I think he is deserving of an All-Star nod, and I think in the event of someone were to get hurt, he'd probably be one of the first guys selected. And I think it won't affect him much long-term, and I think people will forgive him for it. But he's also dealt with a lot, too, as well, like from fan bases and whatnot. And even though I know he acts like that, sometimes pride can be the devil. But I think he was deserving of a nod, but it's a lot of factors that could play a part of that, whether that was his PED usage or whether that was just the lack of the Padres' success as a team, which find themselves 10 games back, I think, in the NL West as we record this. But the guy that I thought really got snubbed, if we're talking about snubs, and I know it's a team that's a lowly team, I know Brent Wilker is having a hell of a year in Oakland. But this would have been a perfect place for Esteury Ruiz to be showcased. I don't understand how people aren't talking about what he's doing in Oakland right now. This dude is on pace to steal 80-plus bases. I know Acuna's on pace as well, but like Esteury Ruiz is a technician at this, and it shows each and every time you watch him take the field. Like he just had a game against Detroit where he just went 2 for 4. And I know his numbers aren't the best, but when you stealing bases like he's stealing in a game that you're trying to make cool and appealing to younger fans by widening the bases and with the pitch clock, he would have been a perfect representative to be for the A's with the year that he's had. And he's a guy that I think is going to garner some votes in Rookie of the Year vote in the American League. I would have loved to have seen him get in. But outside of that, I don't really have any complaints. I'm glad that Felix Bautista got in as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's on the pace to become one of baseball's best closers. And I don't think this is the last you will see of him, because the stuff he has coming out the bullpen to close games for the Orioles in the ninth is just electric.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think you make some good points with Esteury Ruiz. I think, yeah, like he guy's been electric when he's on the base paths. It's one of those things with those types of guys. Like, can you imagine if they got on base in a bigger clip, or if they got, if they were, and the thing is, he's young. So I think I'm not, who knows what's going to happen in the future. So he might be able to do that. So I'm rooting for that guy. Cause I mean, stolen bases are one of the most, electric things to see in baseball, and he's doing it at the best level right now. So, no, yeah, good to see. And what are some of the guys that have been put in late were guys like Kyle Tucker, who replaced, I believe he was the one that replaced Judge. Then you have Julio Rodriguez, who replaced Mike Trout. And then replacing Yordan Alvarez was Mariners pitcher George Kirby. And then, excuse me, sorry, that was wrong. Mariners righty George Kirby replaced Shane McClanahan, who will not be in the All-Star game as well. But yeah, overall, I feel like there wasn't too many snubs there. I mentioned already, of course, if David Bednar, who replaced Clayton Kershaw. So, there wasn't too many snubs. I think just the one that I heard many people talk about was the whole Fernando Tatis thing and why he didn't make it and all that stuff. So, yeah. And another thing too, one more thing, and I'll leave it at that with that these thing is, I think also what didn't help was the outfield and how stacked, all-star outfielders are in general, whether it be the AL or the NL. They're always stacked. So I think that's probably another thing that doesn't necessarily help him as much as he deserves to be there in general. But yeah, nonetheless, yeah. And I think that's one thing I was looking at when I was kind of like, man, why didn't he? But then I forget, I think some people also forget that he's not a shortstop anymore. If you don't watch the Padres a lot. And if he was a shortstop, he's there. Yeah, I think.
I agree.
So
I agree.
Yeah. So nonetheless, I think he, with injuries and all that, I'm sure he has a really good chance of making it. But I think that's a good place to wrap things up there. I did want to mention one thing that we're going to include on this episode of At Bat is I had the pleasure, me and Kyle Means had the pleasure of talking to Oscar nominated director, as well as Peabody and Emmy nominee Sam Pollard, who directed the documentary for the Negro Leagues called The League, that is out on July 7th, this Friday, as well as out digitally July 14th. But yeah, it was great to talk to him, and we had just a 10 minutes with him. I think it was ended up being like 15, but wish it was longer. But we got still a good conversation with him, and I'm going to include a clip of it right now. So enjoy. All right, this is Saul Rodriguez from WARR Media. We are joined by Peabody, Emmy, and Academy Award nominee Sam Pollard. He, of course, is the director of The League that is out in theaters on July 7th and digitally on July 14th. So, Sam, really appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today. The question I want to start off with is, of course, the Major League Baseball has announced that they're having a game in Birmingham, Alabama between the Giants and the Cardinals to honor Hank Aaron, the Negro Leagues. What do you think about that?
I think it's fantastic, Saul. I think to have a game at Rickwood Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, where the Birmingham Black Barons used to play, where Willie Mays came out of, I think it's fantastic. I think what it'll do for the Negro Leagues and the history of Negro Leagues will give it more exposure, and make more people in America aware that there were these phenomenal Negro League teams and players in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I think it's great.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that clip of the interview with Sam Pollard, and watch. Of course, we're going to release that, in its entirety in the next couple of days as well. So hopefully you enjoy that. We're going to release that on YouTube as well as all social media platforms. And of course, watch The League coming out July 7th in theaters and July 14th digitally. as well. It's a great film, and I think and we'll talk about it more. As of course I've told just about everybody, including Gabe, as to to watch that when it comes out, because I think it's a great film in general for sports fans and for baseball lovers in general, man. And it's good to see, as much as we talk about there not being enough black players in Major League Baseball. Hopefully, you got, we have a lot of sports here in America, and we kind of talk about that with Sam Pollard. There is, hopefully we get a lot more guys being inspired to pick baseball over some other sports, maybe just to kind of, get into that. But hopefully you guys enjoy that interview nonetheless. I want to thank, of course, my co-host Miles Porter, and of course Gabe Wilkins, who you can see on the Open Run podcast as well, talking all things basketball, WNBA, and NBA. So thank you for that. And of course, I want to thank everyone for watching, and hopefully enjoy the All-Star festivities. We'll be here next week to wrap those things up and talk about the Home Run Derby champ, as well as the All-Star game and all the things that happened in that. So hopefully everyone enjoyed the episode. Everyone take care. Have a good one.